Welcome back to the 2 Minute Tuesday rig videos, and today we're looking at a Texas rig. So what is the Texas rig? Well, a Texas rig is a rig for putting soft plastic baits, a bit like these, so crawfish, creature baits, worm, putting these baits close to or into cover. It was designed in the late 50s, early 60s in Texas, hence the name, after the invention of soft plastic baits. So the American bass anglers were trying to get their baits into cover and trying to not get the hook snagged onto the weed, etc. So they invented this rig to hide the hook into the baits so they could fish for all these snaggy situations. We're going to look at the Texas rig and how to rig it. Here in the UK and in Europe, we're targeting perch, not bass, primarily. Obviously there's some bass fishing sprouting up, but we are targeting perch. So we're scaling down slightly what the American bass anglers would use. Now the first thing you need is a bullet weight. Now the bullet weight needs to be heavy enough to cast, but as light as possible to pull through the cover. If you look at these underwater shots, you can see the bullet weight is actually dragging the bait along the bottom, and because of the shape of the weight, it's pulling through a lot of the weed. So that's the first thing you need. Don't go too heavy. Alternatively, if you're trying to fish through really heavy cover, and I experimented with this when I was chub fishing in the summer through streamer weed, you need to use a heavier weight than you think, and it will punch the weight through the weed, drag the bait with it. It doesn't catch up on the weed. It's amazing how it stays weed free, and I've been experimenting with that. So in most situations as light as possible, but in some extreme situations you need to go the other way. So it's a light bullet weight. You need offset hooks. They're very important. You can use exposed hooks, but obviously you lose the weedless appeal. Some people use float stops and they peg their rig. Pegging is when you put a float stop above the weight and you can slide it along the leader. You might need 2 float stops to keep it tight. The reason behind that is when you cast out your rig, the lead will slide up the leader. So if you're fishing in deep water, you could get a situation whereby your bait is 4 foot away from your lead and it's falling down. Now in some situations that's a really attractive presentation and you might want that. In other situations you might want to get the lead tight to the hook. So it all depends what you want to do. In most situations you really don't need to worry about this, so I wouldn't bother. The final thing that I don't use is some people use a glass bead behind the weight before the hook. They feel that the weight hitting the glass bead makes a noise and also protects the knot of the hook. I'm not sure this actually helps. It just looks a bit bulky to me, so I tend not to use anything between the weight and the hook. If I want to protect the knot, I could use a float stop, but you find these modern tungsten bullet weights, they're very smooth on the inside, so there is no problem with the weight hitting against the eye of the hook. Right, that's the explanation. Let's put 2 minutes on the clock and let's get straight into building the rig. This is a real simple rig to tie, so I just used my bullet weight. Obviously put it through the correct way, so thin end first. This is the end you attach to the hook. Now some people put on a bead, some people use a glass bead. The theory being that when the weight hits the bead it makes a noise. Some people may use a float stop. I don't use anything because I'm not convinced either way that it makes much difference. Plus most tungsten bullets these days, you find them are really smooth on the inside, so they don't actually grate against the knot. So it's down to personal preference, and that's the beautiful thing about these rigs, you can really play with them. I should have put my glasses on before I did this. And the knot I'm going to use is the Palomar knot. You could use a grinner, which would work quite well. Just make sure you don't get any kink in the line or frailties. So Palomar's easy. Just make a loop, keep the line so it's not crossing over itself. You take it through the eye, like so, and then you just make a loop around there, take that end around the back of the hook, and then what I do is just try and keep everything above the eye of the hook and tease it down. Normally I'd use a bit of saliva just to wet it, and because I don't want any kink in the main line, so to speak, I'll try and do all the tightening, or most of the tightening, through the tag end, and there you go, you have a lovely Palomar knot. And then I'll just cut the tag end off. And there you have it. Very simple but very effective Texas rig. We're using an offset hook with the Texas rig, so some of you may be asking how we rig it. So I'm going to rig it with a crawfish imitation, and it's the same if you use a worm. Basically, that small section there, the offset, you want to kind of judge down the neck of the bait you're using. So put the hook in the centre of the bait, just pull it out about that far down, take it down to the neck, and then what you want to do is kind of measure where you think it's going to come out. So I've put loads of these on the past, so I kind of know, but if you didn't know, you take it down to the neck and then you kind of just marry it up. So you would kind of know the hook wants to come out there. So you just push it through the back of the bait. Make sure it comes out flush on top. So it sits perfectly like so, and if you want to make it weedless, you just push the point back into the bait. So the finished presentation is like so. Really simple and really effective.